I swear they get together in the morning and just kind of like discuss a strategy of like, how can we destroy today's routine? What can we do today to throw it off? No, I'm not kidding. I don't think my kids are vindictive.
Welcome to the Business of Parenting podcast. Tune in as we discuss the principles of successful parenting as a business professional. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of BOP, the Business of Parenting podcast. I have like a very specific voice, I think, every single time I say that. I don't know why. It's an announcer-style voice. I was just thinking to myself. Anyways, I digress. I have an amazing guest with me this morning. I have the one, the only, the oh-so-famous Mr. Durran Cage. Durran, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's good, Jason? How you doing?
Good, man. It's early. I got my coffee. Doing good.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. It's getting towards month end, so I know it can always get a little crazy, for us. So I appreciate you taking the time to kind of, jump on and talk about this, and we got a chance to kind of talk a little bit before we started recording. I'm no parenting expert, but I think learning from people's mistakes is very valuable, and I appreciate you coming on today and just willing to be open and honest and just talk about some really cool topics. So thank you for coming on and jamming with me today. Hey, to kind of kick off today's podcast, for everybody out there that's maybe watching and listening, I love kind of starting off our podcast with little origin stories. So we got a little background. So let's kick it off with, the story about your family and a little bit about your business.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you again, Jason, for having me on. So yeah, just a little bit about me, from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I lived all over before that, military brat. And so, but I claim Albuquerque as home because I was there for about 8 or 9 years. So while being there, after I graduated from school, started selling cars with my best friend, which then led to work for Chrysler, the OEM, brought me out here to Memphis, Tennessee, the good old South. Did that for a little bit, then went back into retail, and then got into consulting work with a vendor, and then started my own business in 2018 called Cage Automotive. And the beautiful part about getting from Albuquerque to Memphis was I did get the chance to meet a phenomenal woman, my mother-in-law, before I talk about my wife, who introduced me to my wife. I was cooking at a dealership, and she's like, "Man, you cook good." She's like, "You with anybody right now?" I was like, "No, not at the moment." And she showed me a picture of her daughter. I was like, "I'm screwed." But anyways, so we get together, end up becoming great friends, end up marrying each other, and then now having a family of 4 with our oldest, Alexander, at 13, then our 9-year-old Preston James, 7-year-old Addison, and the 5-year-old, I think his name is Connor. But it's been fun, and it's been a great ride, never a dull moment, and it's been fun to serve them as a husband and father.
It's fun is a good one. Ride, I would definitely use the word ride. I think ride. We were kind of talking a little bit about this, right? You have 3, I have 3. It was definitely a different type of world when there was 2. And my wife had 1, and then I had 1, and then the second we got outnumbered, it was like. I swear they get together in the morning and just kind of like discuss a strategy of like, how can we destroy today's routine? What can we do today to throw it off? No, I'm not kidding. I don't think my kids are vindictive. No. Yeah. But that's going to be kind of our first talk today. Let's get into a little bit routine. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn from going from 2 kids to 3. And then for other people I've talked to, many after that. But routine is crazy important, not only to the success of our business, but then also the success of the business of parenting. So let's get into it. What are your kind of thoughts and maybe just kind of philosophy around routine?
Yeah, so routine is so important to me because think about this: if we develop great routines into our children at an early age, imagine what that does to them in the future, like a competitive edge that it gives them. Because I think back on my childhood, and I don't really remember my parents giving me a bunch of routine. A lot of us 20, 30 years ago, whatever, The routine was you woke up, you brushed your teeth, you cleaned your room, and then where'd you do next? You typically went outside, you kicked it with your buddies. But it seems like now, because there's so many distractions and different things that kids can get into with tech, that I think routine probably now is more important than ever, and not just for our kids, but for ourselves. I think that's why routine has become such a big thing, because we have a lot of things pulling our energy. So like an example of routine that's important to us, hands down, and this will happen soon within the next hour, is when you wake up in the morning, that morning dictates your day. We really believe that. So in the morning, we really encourage our kids to have some quiet time, like to really get quiet for the first 5 or 10 minutes of their morning, spend time in gratitude. We give them little journals that they get to write in, like a little gratitude journal, get in some meditation time, prayer time. We encourage them to stretch. Awesome. My wife's a big yoga person, but that's one example of a routine. It's just that every single morning, if they don't work on themselves, you can feel it. And I'm sure you've seen this too in your house. Like when that energy's down, like the kid comes down and they're like, and we're like, you didn't take care of yourself this morning, did you? They're like, no, go back upstairs, take care of yourself, come back down. Because we're like, some people didn't wake up this morning. Some people couldn't see this morning. Some people couldn't speak, but yet we're all here. So we need to make sure we're thankful for that. And spend time in gratitude. But the morning routine is probably the most important, because it kind of sets the tone for the entire day.
You know what? You're 100% right. And that's not just for our kids, but just even for ourselves. And I gotta be honest with you, the morning routine is actually not something that I'm super good at teaching, right? I definitely have a morning routine. I get up way earlier than anybody else in the house. I come down, try to grab at least a couple hours before no one else wakes up, and that's how I kind of set my day for success, is by having, those 2-3 hours before anybody wakes up to get some stuff done. But yeah, you're 100% right, man. The morning routine, and I like this, because we think about this from like a sales perspective, we deal a lot with salespeople. Some of the most successful salespeople out there, do have kind of this mental preparation, in the morning. There's a reason why, I think a lot of people work out in the morning. It's getting both your mind and your body prepared for what's to come. And I know you got a bunch of thoughts, and this is a big part of some of the training and coaching that I'm sure you do. So let's go into a little bit about that, both the mental and kind of the physical, kind of preparation. I'll go a little bit farther down this rabbit hole because I like this.
So when you're talking about the mental and the physical preparation for my structure, like how I do the mornings, or are you talking about for the children?
Both, because I think as parents, we have to be prepared mentally as much as they need to be, correct?
No, you're right, because you can't, when it comes to the morning routines, kids can see right through us, right? So I can't sit there and tell them, hey, you need to have a morning routine. Did you take care of this, take care of that? And then me, myself, to not do that, where I'm coming out crusty eyed at 7:30 in the morning, like, you guys just go ahead and eat some cereal. So no, you're right. It's important that I have my own routine, because the word that I share with my wife and kids is like, man, and I'm sure you felt this too, when you wake up in the morning and you get some time to yourself, you get to write your goals, because I'm big on writing goals. Like, that's a non-negotiable in my house. You will write your goals. But when you start writing your goals and planning out your vision and, just getting prepped for the day, and you take care of, like, if you get to walk, like I've been on this walking thing lately, but man, when you've done all that, it's like, I always tell them, it's like somebody could slap me in the mouth at 11 o'clock in the morning and it wouldn't bother me one bit, because I already won. Like, I did more in the first 90 minutes of the day than most people do like an entire day or a week, like when you're reading, writing, and taking care of yourself. So that's what it does for me, because if I don't do those things, the kids can call me out, and I tell them to. Yeah. So we hold each other accountable. So if they see me like, hey guys, good morning. My oldest would be like, man, Daddy, did you get your gratitude in? Did you get the workout this morning? So he'll bust me out. But that's the kind of family we have. It's just like, keep it transparent, keep it honest. But yeah, once you take care of yourself in the morning, it really sets you up to be bulletproof for the rest of the day. Or if you do take a couple punches, it just doesn't feel as bad, versus if you start off your morning with nothing and you start off with this thing.
Yes.
That's when I know, like, when I start waking up in the morning, And the first thing I do is I look at this. I know I'm disconnected, like I'm not right. But when I go, like this morning, I didn't touch this thing for at least the first hour.
Mm-hmm.
That means that I'm in the zone, like I'm feeling good. But when I start off with my cell phone, that means I'm stressing about something. That means I'm worried about either business or something personal, like I'm out of sync in my personal life.
No, and you know what I mean. As you're talking and kind of explaining this, I don't know why I'm thinking through my head of like being on an airplane, and you know how they tell you to put your oxygen on first before you put everybody else's oxygen on first, and I don't know why this is going through my head, but this is kind of what we're talking about here. Look, there's self-care. I mean, how can we expect, you know, our kids or even our employees maybe sometime to follow into a routine if we're not getting ourselves prepared for the routine that will be that day? And there's mental and physical checks for preparation. Now, I'm with you 100% on the phone thing. Gosh, talk about a huge one. And, you know, I fight it sometimes because, like, we'll go on vacation, and I hate to say it, but when we're on vacation, we're kind of like, no rules. Here you go, giving them out to the kids, you know, and then we get back from vacation, and I swear, like, we got to go, like, through this, like, phone detox where it's like I'm up at like maybe like 5:30 or 6 or something like that, and I see this like glow coming from my daughter's room, and I'm like, "Are you on a phone right now?" And she's like underneath the covers, like, "Don't look at me." I'm just like, but yeah, that is just not the way. I mean, this definitely will not mentally or physically prepare you for the day. Now, let's talk a little bit about this gratitude thing, because I think this is a cool idea, and I don't necessarily maybe do it. So can we go a little bit farther down the rabbit hole that is the gratitude, and how you kind of, you know, execute that on a daily basis?
Yeah, they all have. I'll give an example because I've got one in here. So I have composition notebooks, and I've got like, they have something like this, you know, just something that's not too big. But yeah, they just every single morning just write down, you know, 5 to 10 things that you're super thankful for. You know, like what are you appreciative of, and break it down to the ridiculous, like the fact that you woke up and you had a bed this morning, the fact that, you know, that you can stretch and touch your toes, but that gratitude, just spending time and being thankful for the things that we do have. The main trigger point for that is that we don't get complacent with what we have, because I feel like that happens even for myself personally. Like sometimes you can look up, there's things that you push so hard for, but then once you got it, it's like it's not that important to you anymore. It's like you almost push it off to the side. And I think there's power in really reminding yourself of where you've gotten, like just taking time to be thankful. And, you know, me and my wife did it this morning, just talking and just spending thanks about so many things that we're thankful for. And again, it's just those vibes that it gives off and the way that it makes you feel. So teaching kids in an early age, because I think as we get older, Jason, we know how to appreciate things a little bit better. But I feel like kids, if we have kids that we're trying to give them a life that maybe we didn't get as kids, I feel like sometimes one of the worst things that happens to them is now they become complacent and they start expecting these things. Like nothing's really surprising them as much anymore because they've gotten so much, or they've been fortunate. But they need to make sure that they're always taking time, because I don't care who you are on this planet. I mean, anything could happen today or tomorrow that could just strip almost everything away from us. And so making sure that we're spending time to be gratitude, it just changes their mindset and their attitude for the whole day, to be like, you know what, I'm here, super excited to be alive. And my goal is to make somebody else's life a little bit better today.
Man, I love that. I'm talking about some intentionality, right? Like, I mean, we both know one of the biggest keys success to being successful. I need my coffee.
It's okay. Successful
in business is to be intentional with our time.
Yep.
You know, when we're not intentional with our time, then, you know, the day will just kind of run us. We don't necessarily, you know, run the day. And, you know, if we're not intentional, we'll never execute on a routine. We might every once in a while. We get lucky, right? Like maybe some things kind of align. We're like, hey, I executed the routine. But if I'm not intentional in my preparation leading up to the routine, there's a lot of, it's a Swiss cheese now of a routine. There's a lot of open holes in there, man. And I love this gratitude. It's being intentional gratitude. And I think this is kind of a good segue into work-life balance, which is our next topic, you know, because talk about, you know, trying to maintain that quote unquote unicorn that is, work-life balance, you have to be intentional in those efforts. But I also think there's a lot of misconception about what work-life balance is. There's this, I think people kind of see this because the key word is balance here. They kind of see this like this scale. And this scale, on one side of the scale is my work, and then the other side of my scale is this life. And for some reason, they have to be completely in par. If I work 60 hours on my business, and I must work 60 hours I'm at home with my kids and everything. And I don't necessarily think that's the truth. I think the term work-life balance causes probably more anxiety and pressure than anything else out there. But let's talk about what is the misconceptions around work-life balance, and how do you approach it?
Yeah. So my model has been like, there is no such thing as balance. Like there really isn't, like especially like when you're in our club, when you get 3 or more, you can throw balance out the door, but no different than anything else, whether business or personal, you have to break things down from maybe whatever you're trying to do that's a big goal and break it down to the ridiculous. So I'll give you an example. If we're sitting here talking about, okay, how am I going to balance this out? Like, it's getting crazy. I'm getting ready for a conference, or I'm trying to build a business. Mm-hmm. Well, what you don't do is you set these crazy goals that you have to hit every single day, where I'm going to spend time with my wife. I'm going to make sure I connect with Jason. I'm going to make sure I connect with my kids. It's going to drive you back. It's going to drive you crazy. Right. So what I found is that breaking it down throughout the week and the whole month is what makes things a little bit more manageable from a balance standpoint. So what I mean by that is, if I'm going to be gone for 3 or 4 days traveling and doing business, how in the world is there such thing called balance? Exactly. There is no balance in that. But what I can do is see that, okay, I'm going to be grinding for the next 7 days, but for the next 4 days, I'm actually going to be traveling. Those 3 days after and in between that, I will have some 4 and 5 hour pockets on my calendar. And that's when you slide in that family time, like you're really intentional with the time that you have. But then maybe the next week, it's not near as crazy. And that's when you over deliver the amount of time that you have, because now it's like, what do they call it? The emotional deposit. You need to like overcompensate before something's about to go down. So that's really been effective for me. Like, I communicated to my kids, because it seems like that's how my business flows. It's like in seasons. And I'm sure you see this too. It's like, everything's kind of like smooth, like, and then next thing you know, you get hit with a big project, big client or something, and it just freaking wipes you out. But what you have to do when you see that coming, as I just explained to my kids, like, hey, daddy's going to be out for the next few days, but you know what? I've already got something planned for us on Sunday between such and such time where we're going to do some fun stuff. And then, of course, if you see it, because I think a lot of time us as parents, we react to giving our kids time instead of being proactive with giving our kids time. Yes. So what I teach is like, just try to get in the forefront of it. If we know that our time is about to get pulled away or some big project, then we need to go hard leading up to that point. So then that way there's that cushion that they're like, you know what, daddy's doing his thing right now. We know he's grinding, but I did so much leading up to it that they were okay.
You know what? I love that. And it's not necessarily about the amount of hours, but how deep those hours are that I think make the biggest difference. I mean, I kind of put this kind of into perspective. It's like I schedule 2 hours a night, like literally in my phone. So my phone reminds me between 6 and 8 for kids time. It's just, there's a little bit of a hack there, because my phone will actually go into do not disturb. So like I can't receive calls, I can't receive texts and stuff like that. So it's like I'm not 100% great at being intentional, but I'm trying. Like I'm trying to put hacks in place so I can be better at it, right? And there are some nights that I'm quite good at getting deep, with those 2 hours. Like I can do a lot. Like connection-wise, growth-wise, development-wise, training, coaching, whatever. I can do a lot in 2 hours if that is literally what's the only thing that's in front of my mind. I don't execute it 100%. I got to get better at trying to execute this on a regular basis. But you're right though. This is not an amount of hours of how we invest it. I think it's more of how deep is the time that we spend. But I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on how we can better that amount, or get better usage of that time that we spend with the family and the kids.
Yeah, I think that one's really simple. The way to get the best use of your time with your kids is to ask your kids what they want to do with their time versus what we want to do with that time.
Ah, there we go.
Right?
Yeah,
Because
right.
us as parents, as a father, what would we want to do? Like if I've got my 9-year-old son, I might think it's best to just say, hey, man, let's go outside and shoot some hoops or let's go throw a ball. But let's say, like my 9-year-old, for example, he's very hands on, right? Very intelligent and hands on. I'm not. Like I'm the person that I get a leak, I'm calling TaskRabbit, I'm calling my guy, he's coming over. My 9-year-old, if he sees a leak, he's got the flashlight on his head. He's looking, trying to figure out what's going on. So when there's time with daddy, he wants to do something that makes me uncomfortable. Build Legos. And I'm talking about Legos, like when you got hands my size, he's got Legos the size of a fingernail.
Yep.
Me trying to put that stuff together is uncomfortable. However, I give that kid 15 to 30 minutes of my time building a Lego set with them, and I'm the world's greatest dad in his eyes. But if I say, hey, man, no Legos today, let's go outside and throw the football around for a little bit. Okay, Dad. He would do it, but afterwards he might not have that same And so that's what I've learned is that when it comes to kid time, I always am intentional about what do you want to do and what would be the best use of our time together that you would like. And that's been phenomenal for me because a lot of times we just dig into what we're most comfortable with instead of letting our kids dictate our time.
You know what? You're 100% right. And I was thinking about as I was listening to you, like I used to be actually better at executing this, and then I was trying to figure out like I still do a decent job, but I'm not consistent. And I think one of the biggest challenges I think with a lot of other parents out there is they're working from home now, and it seemed like when I was in the office, we had our office in Toronto. I had it's a good commute. Like if anybody ever knows about Toronto, like you don't live anywhere in Toronto. You're always an hour or 45 minutes, between 45 minutes and an hour away, right? So I always had kind of this like hour or 45 minutes of like decompression time before I got home. So then I felt like I was like ready for the next job. Like I'm ready for the next job. Okay, I left this job. Now I got to go get ready for the next job, which is being the dad, right? And I think for a lot of parents, this is tough right now because there is none. Like I got 12 steps to go upstairs, and I'm literally, right in the thick of it. There's no, and so if I try to decompress at all, then I end up just taking their time to use to, so it's tough. But I've been trying to figure out, and I want to pick your brain. Look, I like finding rabbit holes, and I'll go down them. So this is the rabbit hole I want to go down. Is I used to have this decompression time so that I could reset myself for this next job. It's very difficult now to have that time, or at least it's compressed. I don't have a 45-minute commute anymore, right? But I'd love to get your thoughts on how we can kind of decompress and then reset. So, because how many times have I seen this? When people come home and they just go straight to this thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So what are your thoughts? How do we do that?
Man, I'll be honest with you, Jason. That's one that I still have to work on because think about what we're talking about. Everything we're talking about is really about others focused if we're really trying to make this thing work. And so we're being intentional with kids and with our spouse. We're doing all these things. But when do we have time to be intentional with ourselves? And so when it comes to decompressing, I normally like to do it. There's like this window of time that I have between when I am here, because I'm not at home all the time, but when I am here to do dinner and spend time, like I really try to give my family all the time that I can between dinner and when it's time to like put them to bed. But then normally maybe just before putting them to bed, maybe like 30 minutes, everybody kind of like does their own time. Like everybody really in our house does like a decompressed time about 30 minutes before we go to sleep. So try to, turn the TVs off or grab a book, do something that kind of sets that tone for the night. And so normally that's the same time that I do the same thing where I just like, I'll sit over there in a chair or something and just kind of just like think about the day. And then I decompress, I think about the day, like what went well, what did I miss? And then I pull out my calendar. I always look at the next day, like what all I have lined up, because the next day starts the night before, right? So I'm sitting there looking at everything, just checking everything out. But normally that's what we try to do for the whole house is make not just me, but the whole house, everybody, let's just chill for 35, 45 minutes alone time. If you want to watch a little something or put on some music, you can do that. But that's normally that time that I try to pencil in, even for my wife. I mean, you got to think the moms, no matter what they're doing, whether they're a stay-at-home, which is a very difficult job, or there's somebody that's wearing both hats, they need that time as well to just let yourself decompress, chill, play some music, do something, but do it alone if possible, just so you can just woo-saw a little bit.
No, but it's true though, right? Decompression is one thing, then the transition is another. And look, I think for anybody out there watching and listening right now, look, we're not experts. We're fumbling our way through this as well, just like anybody else out there. But I think the ultimate goal is to be intentional. Try. If you just kind of let it go, and you just, if you're not structured or routine, this goes back to our very first topic. If we're not routine in the way we decompress or the way we transition from, the one business to the business of parenting, if we're not transitioning well in between those two, it can make things incredibly difficult. But no, I love this. This is a great topic. In fact, it probably could be an entire podcast on itself. Now, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our time, but we have a third topic, and I love this topic. Because I think you're doing some really cool stuff. Bringing kids into the business, I think, is incredibly important. It definitely supports kind of our previous topics around work-life balance. Letting the kids see what happens and what is the business. It makes them connected. There's so many things to it, and then of course it promotes more routine. But I'd love to kind of hear how you've kind of executed on bringing the kids into the business.
Yeah. So I have to always be careful with that because I don't want like workforces to come to my house and be like, man, what are you doing with these kids? No, I'm just joking. But no, so what I do in the house is I try to get intentional. I've written down intentional on my paper so much, but I try to get intentional about what, again, they want. And then see if there's an area in the business that they could use that talent or that skill or that gift and add that to the business. So the like a real life example, my oldest son, he wants to do like gaming and stuff like that. And, his name is AC Gamer. And so in doing that, he wants to have his own YouTube channel, all these other things. He wants to be able to show what he's doing. And so I said, you know what, like if you really want to learn a YouTube channel and you want to learn editing and stuff like that, I have a course that I've taken on it. I said, you should take this. And I said, and have fun with my stuff. I said, because I don't do near enough with YouTube as I should. I said, well, why don't you just have fun and blow that thing up? I said, man, if it ever turns into something that generates some revenue, I wrote up a little contract. He gets a certain percentage of the earnings. And he literally has just taken ownership of it. And it's taught me, though, to not pursue perfection with him, because I know when I first started editing content and doing things on camera, I wasn't the best. But sometimes I could be critical of other people's work, but I've just learned to let him just fail, let him just have fun, let him mess up a few subtitles. But him doing that now, he's super excited and supercharged. So when he does start his own company and he does start blowing up his AC Gamer stuff, he already knows like how he wants to lay things out. He knows his content strategy. He knows how to use Canva. And I think that's cool. So just making sure that what I would tell any parent that's looking at bringing either their spouse or their kid is a lot of times, again, we focus on what we need to help our business, but they might not be the person that helps us with that need, but there could be something that's in their skill set that they could bring to the business that we didn't even think, like, oh my gosh, like this person's a genius. Like he or she can really help me out. And that's what I'm excited about as my other ones grow up. It's like, all right, what's your skill set? What's your gift? What do you want to do? And then finding where I can put that in the business has been phenomenal.
You know what? And it's fun. I'm not going to lie. It is kind of fun, right? When my two worlds collide, I actually think it's pretty dang cool. I just kind of, maybe I'm like, oh, proud papa moment. I'm like, this is pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like it is, my, it's funny that you bring up the video thing, because my youngest comes to me and, he's like, and he sees my YouTube channel and he watches a few videos. So he'll come back to me. He'll go, Dad, who that person you were talking to? And I'm like, you actually watched that? Okay.
Yeah.
But he wants a YouTube channel. He's 9 years old. And I'm like, you know what? I'll make you a deal. All right. If you learn how to put together and edit 20 videos, right, then we'll open a YouTube channel, but only if you can
Yes.
execute on 20 videos first, right? And because I think people, the kids gotta know, like, they see these YouTube influencers and they think they just kind of like flipped on a camera one day and they had millions of followers and da 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 da. I'm like, no, there's like real work that goes behind. You're watching a 4.5 minute video. You just don't. So like I downloaded iMovies on his iPad. He watched like a 35-minute tutorial on it, and he like made this this video of him and his friends playing hide and seek, and he added titles and he added some special effects and a subscribe button, and I'm just like, okay, man, like you're getting into this thing, right? But I'm gonna make him do 20 before he kind of gets into it, right? Because I think a lot of people just think like getting into a business is just it's a light bulb that you flip on. We both know that is not the case at all, right? Like that is not the case at all. But I get excited, but I do have to sometimes kind of pull back my excitement a little bit, because I'm like, oh yeah, I get to do it. He's gonna be a part of the business. It's gonna be amazing. He's gonna run my whole video department. I'm like, he's 9 years old.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. I know what you mean exactly. It's like, yes.
It's yes, but yes. No, look. I do think that there are ways to bring kids in that impact them from just kind of a responsibility perspective, right? And so like let's kind of go down this rabbit hole. Do you feel that your son's maybe a little more empowered now, and are there additional levels of responsibility he may not have learned if he wasn't given this opportunity to kind of work with you?
Definitely. I would sum it up in one word: confidence. I feel like his confidence has gone up, because you know how it is, Jason. Like, imagine you get some content, like you see a podcast like this one, and then you take a clip where we drop something that's valuable, and you turn that into a short and put that on a YouTube or whatever, and then that thing takes off, and you see 100 views within 72 hours. All of a sudden, you feel like, okay, I got this thing. I'm the next Quentin Tarantino. You know what I mean? Like, you think you're the best, but I've noticed like the swagger and the confidence makes him feel good, because I call that mastery. It's like whenever you get to the point where you start seeing something that you want to go after mastery in, and you feel that you're like, ooh, I can really take this thing to another level. I feel like that's where he's at. And that's a fun place to be, when you found something that you actually enjoy doing, that you would do without even getting paid for. That's when you struck gold.
And you know what? That is so incredibly valuable. Like I'll be totally honest with you. When Lily, my oldest, she came to me, she goes, Dad, I want to be in the business. I want to be a part of the business. And I'll be completely honest. My first thought was like, yeah, okay, how am I gonna, it was like, all right, I'm already balancing like 15 other things. It's like, okay, what little task can I give her to, but I was like, I honestly kind of saw it as a chore originally out of the gate. I was like, okay, I don't know necessarily what I'm gonna find here, but I think I do need to find, something. So I had to kind of push myself a little bit to get them a little involved. But, to your point, I mean, that's what you get. That's the return. That's, building up, kids' confidence in themselves is so insanely important, especially with, I work with a younger generation, and you can definitely tell, with the generation I'm working with right now, there were kids that grew up with confidence and ones not so much. And as young adults, you can definitely see the difference in them for sure. So there's so much value to it. Look, Durran, I know it's towards the tail end of our time, and I'm getting the ping on my phone going, come on, time to go. But I want to finish out. I always like finishing out these conversations with at least one last question. For any, let's say, new or upcoming parents that may or may not be listening to maybe listening to actually the podcast, what advice would you share with any new or upcoming parents?
Honestly, man, I would sum up like my notes. If you didn't take notes during this episode, go back through and take some notes. But the biggest thing I took as a refresher and reminder for me was just being intentional. Like, just be intentional in every area of your family. I hate to say family business, but every area that the time that you have with your kids, when you communicate anything that you do, be intentional, but be intentional with them in mind, not I'm checking a box, because that would be me. That if there was one thing that I felt that I did the worst job of, like sometimes as a father, especially when I was really grinding, I was a check the box father. So it was like, check, I got with Jason, check, I got with Alexander, check. And that's not being intentional. That's just making sure that I can check and say that I spent a little time. But being intentional is, again, more around planning, understanding. And then I like what you said at the beginning that I want to put in is the client note or the client notebook. You're right, dude, because I have files on every single client I've ever worked with, and I don't have near the files on my kids, like just documentation. So I want to get with my wife and get like their own little notebook that we keep notes in. I think that's great because now you can kind of document the journey. And then, I know you and I are both like data people, like nerds, because you got to have some data. So that part I'm super encouraged about. So just being intentional with your children and documenting that journey along the way, I think would be really rewarding.
That's awesome. I love it. No, you're 100% right. Like intentionality is not something, like I said, my kids didn't come with a manual. I wish they did. I could picture like they should come with like a car, because we're in the car business, and it needs to be an automotive manual. It needs to be like, that thick. And it's like when this light goes off, go to page 1126, go to section 57B, and there you go. That's what that light means. They don't come with one. They don't come with one. So intentionality is definitely, we have to maintain that mindset, I think, to be successful at the business of parenting. Durran, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me. For everybody out there watching, listening right now, who would love to maybe connect with you and follow along with your journey professionally, what is the best way to do so?
You can just Google Durran Cage with 2 R's, Durran. I'm on LinkedIn, every pretty much social media profile out there. Just search, connect me. You can send me a message anytime. My phone number is on my website on cageautomotive.com. But like Jason, just here to serve, and I'd love to help you on the personal side, business side, or either just to jam and catch up. So Jason, cannot thank you enough, my New Mexico, my Albuquerque friend, for having me on, and I'm super excited to get back there and see if I can maybe ship you some green chili.
No, seriously, I'm gonna make you pick me up some green chilies. But Durran, thanks again, man, for taking the time to jam with me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your just openness and honesty. Man, very, very cool. Have yourself an amazing day. Thank you.
Thanks, you too, Jason.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business of Parenting podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.